latest in tech and accessibility. This is Access Tech Live with Stephen Scott and Marc Aflalo.
Hey guys, this is Access Tech Live with me, Stephen Scott, and Marc Aflalo. Now, the Accessible Canada Act is a landmark piece of legislation that is hoping to enable a barrier-free Canada by 2040 for all disabled Canadians. It's no small task and need everyone to be involved. Now, the head of all of this is Stephanie Cadieux. That is Canada's first ever Chief Accessibility Officer. Now, a year into her new role, Marc Aflalo caught up with her to find out how it's going.
Stephanie, you are no stranger to AMI. You've been on Double Tap with Stephen from Vienna. You've been on The Pulse with Joeita Gupta before. But for our audience here on this brand new show, can you tell people about your job as Chief Accessibility Officer? Because that title leaves so much to the imagination.
Sure. Well, first things first, congratulations on the new show.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Chief Accessibility Officer for Canada, the first one. And that means we're really building the role in many respects. But the role was created under the Accessible Canada Act specifically. And my role is as an advisor, an independent advisor to the minister responsible for the act. And I am there to monitor the progress that we're making as a country towards becoming barrier-free by 2040.
I think sometimes it's important to get a little bit of a backstory, and if you don't mind, what brought you to this role? What path led you to this role in the government?
You know what? When I took the role, I said to myself, well, I think this is it. This is what I was meant to do. Because, I was injured. I had a spinal cord injury when I was 18. That set my life on a super different path than the one I had intended. But it's been a really interesting one. I was an online entrepreneur in 1998-ish, but then I ended up falling into a role in the disability sector, working with Spinal Cord Injury BC. I was working as an advocate and there for 8 years, which led me into a role in provincial politics. I got myself elected as an MLA in the legislature for almost 14 before taking this role.
You know, when I think about a job that might have a lot of red tape and a lot of hurdles and roadblocks, I don't think that there is any other job I could possibly think of other than yours that might have as many challenges in front of it as one that you're taking on. Do you feel the same way? Do you feel like it's a hard task at hand, or do you just embrace the challenge and just hit on straight like a freight train?
Oh, I love a good challenge. But you're right. There are a lot of complexities. As I said, in my role, though, I'm really the cheerleader. I'm the champion for the work ahead. I'm there to say to people, why is it important that we include accessibility and think about accessibility from the start? Why do we care about including people with disabilities in every aspect of society?
Do you find that a lot of it's education? Really just because I find, listen, on my side of things when it comes to this show, you know, I don't have a disability, so I come from the point of view of someone who asks a lot of questions. I try to understand the perspective. I never will understand it from the point of view of someone who actually has a disability because I'm just not in their shoes. But, you know, I'm the father of an autistic son, and I can speak to that point of view and various things like that. But I find that I'm educating a lot. I'm spending a lot of time just trying to break down what people might think is complicated into sometimes logic and just plain English, so that the light bulb goes off and they go, oh, that's why we need to do this, and it just becomes logical. Is that a similar situation to you, what you're doing?
I find that in life. I find that a lot. But in this role as well. And as I say, it's a learning curve for everyone. Nobody has all the answers here. It's hard to individualize everything. It's not even possible. And so as we go through this, there are things that people are learning and questions that people are having to ask or be asked in order to get it right. And sometimes we're not going to get it right on the first try, maybe not even on the second. But the important thing is being open to it, asking the right questions, being open to the feedback, not taking it personally if we get it wrong, but instead learning from our failures, so to speak, as we move forward.
Yeah, and that the Accessible Canada Act, and just I think accessibility in general, people sometimes think it's only for people who have a disability, but that's not true. Accessibility means that anybody can have equal access to everything. There's no barriers, as you said, a barrier-free Canada. So where do you feel, and I say from that perspective, because you can only do as much as you can do in terms of advocating, but where do you feel we are when it comes to the Accessible Canada Act? Do you measure it by a percentage? How do you measure it? Where do you feel we stand kind of today?
We're working on that, actually, trying to figure that out.
What the metric is, right?
Exactly. What are the metrics, and how do we figure that out? How do we set a baseline? How do we measure from it? It's not simple. We're at a starting point. It doesn't. In some cases and in some places, we are ahead of other jurisdictions. We are the first country to have a chief accessibility officer. So the fact that we're thinking about it at that level and we're making a commitment at that level as a country is really big. It doesn't mean that people with disabilities have access to everything at all. We are recognizing we have a long way to go. In the built environment, we have a long way to go. It's easiest to think about the built environment, I think, in terms of accessibility. That's where our minds naturally go. We think about wheelchairs, we think about ramps, we think about power door openers, and we say, okay, we understand this. Understanding it and doing it are two different things. When we move along the path of accessibility and start thinking about things that are a little less obvious, technology, access to all aspects of technology and whether or not they are inclusive and accessible. What about thinking beyond that? What about policy design? What about program and service delivery? What does accessibility mean in those contexts? It's much more complex and difficult work. We have to be asking a lot of questions all the time. And how do we get that right? Ultimately, we will get it right if we include people with disabilities, and that is at the core of the act, at the center of the act, is nothing without us. Not nothing about us without us, just nothing without us, and that means including people with disabilities in all the perspectives from the beginning and asking those questions. And so, in and of itself, we're starting from scratch there, but it's so important.
Baby steps. It takes baby steps, unfortunately, sometimes to get traction. And that's something we're trying to do on our show. I know it's something that you're trying to do definitely in your position as Chief Accessibility Officer. I have a really personal question, Stephanie, here, okay? And you can refrain from answering, but we're talking all about new iPhones because Apple just unveiled things a couple days ago. Are you an iPhone user?
I am an iPhone user.
Okay, so this is the really personal question, and again, you can say you don't want to answer, but are you going to be upgrading to the new phone?
I am actually in the process of thinking about and deciding about upgrading my phone. I actually have two. I have one for work and one for personal. So we're talking about my personal one. I generally don't update it right away because I'm too cheap. So
no, you're not cheap. You're frugal, and you're being smart about it. Okay, there's a difference there.
Exactly. Sure. That sounds way better. And so I probably won't upgrade to the newest and best. I am thinking about upgrading the one I currently have, though, to something newer.
There you go. Is there any particular feature or reason that you want to upgrade it? Because I know when people ask me, to me, it's always about the camera. It's all about capturing my kids as they grow up. So that's the compelling reason for me to always upgrade. And because I do a show like this, it's a great excuse. But any particular reason that you would?
Yeah, I want a purple one.
That's a good enough reason in my book.
Is it? Yeah. So my husband doesn't agree with me that that's an important reason.
Is there any particular, just out of curiosity, is there any particular use of an iPhone that as a wheelchair user you have specifically felt that has made a difference in your life? And the answer can be no here. There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, actually, just in like the last year or so, 2 years maybe, I learned about the assistive touch features, which are super helpful for me as a person who has limited hand function because of my paralysis. That has been super helpful, setting that up and setting up those functions for the things that I use most, and so I don't have to press multiple buttons and things at once. It has been really helpful.
Amazing. Stephanie, we're going to continue this conversation for a very long time, hopefully constantly with more positive updates as we go and as we build towards a more accessible Canada. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for always joining us and being a good champion of the things that we do here. Hopefully we can return the favor and have you back on really soon.
Oh, thanks. I look forward to those continued conversations and that progress. And thank you for everything you do. I learn things every time I watch the show.
Oh, that is fantastic to have Stephanie Cadieux there, Canada's first Chief Accessibility Officer. What a role, what a woman, and we're so pleased to have her here on our very first show on Access Tech Live this week. I have to say, the colour purple is a good reason to buy a new phone. I love that answer. I absolutely love it. But I just want to say, when it comes to the feature set, you asked about the question around wheelchairs. And, one of the things that I thought was fantastic was when activity came along, one of the features that came along shortly afterwards, because often the watch, for example, would ask you, as well as the phone, would say, are you going for a run? And there were a lot of people in wheelchairs who felt that wasn't really appropriate to ask that, or didn't seem appropriate. And Apple fixed that. They addressed that. And, that may be a very minor change to some degree, but it made people feel more included. And I think that was another great feature of these devices as well. So listen, we're live today. This is a live show, so we've been getting lots of feedback. Mark, how's it online? Is it? Have we broken the internet?
No, we haven't broken the internet. People are commenting on the live stream itself on YouTube. Of course, if you want to watch it, if you're not watching it now, at Access Tech Live, of course, on social media, find all the links there. Connor Smith wrote in and said hi. Eliza wrote in, said she needs the iPhone in pink. Kara wrote in, I have the iPhone 12. Is it worth the upgrade? Jordan wrote in, I think I'll upgrade to the iPhone 15 Pro. The optical zoom looks amazing. And Janice said that was a great interview. So this is, the reason, and thankfully they're validating us as why we're here live, so that we can get to feedback like that during the show while it's happening, and hopefully answer that question, which is, I don't know, for example, I have the iPhone 12. Is it worth upgrade? I think definitely it's worth an upgrade if you have the iPhone 12. I mean, we're several generations ahead. What do you think, Stephen?
I agree. I think this is the year when it comes to the iPhone 15 this year. And, we've got Shelley Brisbane standing by. We'll bring her back in and she can answer this herself later. But personally, for me, I think if you're on the iPhone 12 or below, then I think this is the year. This is the year to move up. If you've got the iPhone SE and you've been hesitant because you really like the home button, maybe it's time to move along. Maybe the action button could become a home button. Hey, there's an idea, Apple. You could do that. Why didn't they do that as a matter of interest? Why not put a fingerprint sensor in there? Oh, the thoughts in my mind. If only I ran Apple, eh? But anyway, yes, we are live. We're getting your contributions. Keep them coming.
Yes, absolutely. And don't forget the question of the day, which is, will you be upgrading to the iPhone 15? And more importantly, of course, why? Because that helps put it into context. Stephen, you said Shelley's coming back. I don't want to keep her waiting any longer. We got to talk about software updates, because I'm curious what we need to know when it comes to accessibility in iOS 17, not only for the phones, though, for the iPad as well. So do stick around. Shelley Brisbane's back in just a moment here on Access Tech Live.
We want to hear from you. Follow us on social media and get involved at Access Tech Live. We'll be right back.